Alrighty. Hello once again, universe. I think for this yap session, I wanted to talk about Black Desert Online again. Because, the last time I talked about Black Desert Online, people really agreed. I wanted to talk, though, more specifically about what makes the combat in Black Desert Online so compelling. I think that even for non-BDO players, I think the thing that I've always seen people talk about is, Black Desert Online, the thing that it has going for it is its combat, right? I feel like maybe occasionally I've also seen people praise the life skills system. Even though if you get too much into the weeds of that, I think people reverse their opinion. But the combat, people talk about the combat, how fun the combat is, right? And I agree. That was the main reason I enjoyed Black Desert Online. The combat was extremely fun. And I saw a couple weeks ago that they're coming out with Guild Wars 3, and I'm excited for Guild Wars 3, right? I didn't play a lot of Guild Wars 2, but I did play a little bit. I was a little tardy to the party, so it was kind of hard for me to want to get into it, but I did play it a little bit. I'm excited for Guild Wars 3, but here's the big but, right? One of the things that I saw with Guild Wars 3 is it says action combat, right? I feel like pretty much everything gets slapped with action combat these days. And I was trying to think about, in my head, I feel like I used to see MMOs that said action combat, and I would go, oh, it's going to be like Black Desert Online. That's fucking sick, dude. I'm so ready for this. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There are so many games, MMOs, let alone games in general, but, specifically MMOs that say action combat and are not nearly as enjoyable as Black Desert Online. So, okay, then the question becomes, well, why is that? What makes Black Desert Online's combat so appealing compared to other MMO combat systems, right? And I've been kind of mulling this over in my head the last couple days. I've been thinking about this. And I think I've got it narrowed down to a couple things. I'll start with, I think, the most obvious / overlooked thing, okay? How you use abilities in Black Desert Online, the process in which you go about piloting your character is a billion times more fun than most other MMOs. So what are we talking about specifically? I'm talking about the literal inputs of the abilities themselves, okay? So many MMOs, even if they're action combat, they fall into this WoW trap, I think I would call it, where we're just gonna put all of your abilities on your number keys, and you just have to press the number keys. This is extremely boring. This is not only super boring, but I feel like it really limits creativity. I think there can be creativity with your input method when it comes to video games. And I think that a lot of MMOs, when they're being developed, they go, well, World of Warcraft and all these other big MMOs, they just have you press 1 through 0 on your fucking keyboard, and then you press this button to swap the spells on your keyboard, like on your 1 through 0 buttons, on your number keys, to a different set of spells. So you just 1 through 0, and then you click one button, and then 1 through 0 again. You click the button again, 1 through 0, right? And that's just so fucking boring, I think. It's really, really boring. To me, the input method, the control scheme of how you use abilities in Black Desert Online is closer to that of a fighting game than an MMO. And that makes it really fun. Like, really, really fun. That's a good thing. If you want your combat to be intricate, I feel a sneeze coming on. I'm going to try and hold it in. If you want your combat to be intricate and to be, engaging and, to feel fun, to feel skillful, then you should aim for more than just I press 4 on my keyboard and then I press 6 on my keyboard, then I click the button to swap to my second row of skills, and then I press 3 on my keyboard, and then sometimes I press 6 on my keyboard again, otherwise I just swap back to the first row of spells and then I hit 2 on my keyboard. I just feel like that's less fun. And I know that this is this is such a minor difference. And I've talked to people about this over the years, and people tend to say like, well, that, what's the difference? There's no difference. It's just, it's the same process. It's just a difference of hitting 2 buttons versus 1 or whatever, yada, yada, yada. I disagree, man. I think that the requirement of knowing how to phrase this. So in Black Desert Online, your F key does one thing, right? Your F key does something different if you're moving forward, quote unquote. It does something different if you're moving backwards, quote unquote. It does something different if you're holding shift, right? This means that in order to, pilot your character to the utmost efficiency, you really have to master pressing these keys properly. Otherwise, you'll get a misinput and then you'll look fucking stupid, which happens fairly frequently. For bad players like me, at least. And so it's almost like there's a challenge. Yes, there's the challenge of knowing what abilities to use at the right time, right? That's the same across, all these different MMOs, right? Your skill rotations, the exceptions, right? When you veer off path because something happened, all that stuff is the same, right? And I think that that's what people get a little too focused on. Yes, that's the same no matter what the control scheme is, but you have this extra challenge of, I no longer just hit 2 on my keyboard. I have to, hit S to move backwards and then F. But because I don't want to just move backwards, I don't want to just be walking backwards because, maybe that's going to fuck me at some point. I really have to master hitting those 2 keys at essentially the same time, but not quite the same time, because then there's the chance that you fuck up in the other direction. It's like this extra layer of challenge that I think a lot of the more hardcore players appreciate, I want to say. So I think that's the first thing. I think I guess I would say the fighting game control scheme, I suppose, of using abilities in Black Desert Online. I think it adds a lot to the game, a lot more than I think people realize, in all honesty. I think next, I want to talk about animation cancels. I feel like half the time, when I see a new MMO announced, and then I watch combat of it, and there's no animation canceling, oh my God, it's so fucking boring, dude. And I feel like developers have kind of misplaced priority, I suppose. There seems to be a growing there seems to be a growing portion of game development that the focus is purely on spectacle. And I think that's probably, you could probably draw it. I'm just going to throw something out my ass. I don't know if you can back this up or not, but I feel like it's because we're getting dumber, just as like a race of human beings. Like humans are getting dumber. Legitimately, they're just getting stupider. We're just really dumb, and we're getting dumber every day, it feels like. And so it's more and more people are engaged, I guess I'll say, by spectacle than anything else, right? And so these game developers come along and they say, well, you know, we can't just have a cool, you know, we can't just have like a simple animation that, you know, like let's say something like grave digging, right? Awakened Warrior's grave digging. For anyone who doesn't know, it's basically he kind of like spins around with his big ass greatsword and then does a little downward slash, right? Now, if you look at old school MMOs, this would be a little, you know, your character just like holds his sword out, spins around, and then does like a downward chop, right? Nowadays, I feel like more and more games in general, but, you know, again, we're talking about MMOs specifically, is like, no, this needs to be a spectacle. This ability needs to be like, it needs to be like a Marvel movie where you're just like, whoa, oh my God, that's so cool every single time you use it, right? And you might already be typing in the comments, well, hold on, Black Desert Online's abilities are like the exact same. They're all about spectacle. And yes, they are. Spectacle itself is not a bad thing. I think spectacle is bad if you force me to watch it every single time. Annie canceling, right? Animation canceling. Dude, if I don't want to watch the same fucking ability animation every single time, I should not have to. I should be able to cancel out of that every single time if I want to. Not only is this just a really nice, I would honestly say quality of life change, because maybe I fucked up on my ability press and, you know, I'm like, oh shit, I just want to like use the right ability. Instead, I have to sit there for like a second or a second and a half watching my character do the wrong fucking ability. Like, what a dumbass I am. Holy shit. I think it also increases player creativity in terms of finding when on these skills is the optimal time to cancel out of them, right? So for something like Gravedigger, right? Gravedigger has a pretty, or had, I don't know anymore, but it had a pretty nasty slow on it, right? So let's say that the slow is on the very first hit of the ability, right? So maybe if I'm just after the slow and I don't really care about the damage or anything else that the skill provides, I just want to slow my opponent, I can use that ability, and then the second I see it hit one time, I can cancel out of it and move into the next skill that I want to use. That increase in player creativity, I think, is super important. Very, very, very important. And I think that Black Desert Online has a lot of animation cancels. Now, you can't cancel out of everything in Black Desert Online, and I don't think you have to be able to cancel out of everything. But I would say, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the sweet spot is. Just pulling a number out of my ass, I would probably say your goal should probably be half of your skills you should be able to cancel out of, either by just ending the ability early, or you can also achieve animation cancels by allowing it to chain into another ability like early, right? So if I start ability 1, I have two options, right? I can either let ability 1 play out in full, or I can roll it into ability 2. I mean, that's another way of animation canceling. It doesn't have to necessarily be just stop ability 1. There's multiple ways to do it. But when you give players these options, it increases player creativity. It makes your game way more in depth without you having to really do anything about it, because it's almost like a community made, it's almost like community content, right? Like when the community makes maps for, like, you know, Nazi zombies, let's say, for Black Ops 3, right? There's a whole thriving scene for community made maps, right? And Black Ops 3 still has a decent player base to this day because of that. It's the same thing. You're going to increase the longevity of your combat system. You're going to increase player engagement in it by giving them more creativity and more freedom. And I think a lot of MMOs, more and more, I'm watching and I'm like, you know, yeah, the abilities look cool, I guess, but man, they're just long. And I'm like, I'm gonna get tired of that by like one weekend. The spectacle will be dead, and instead I'll just be sitting there going, I wish I could start my next ability already while I'm sitting here watching this fucking Marvel movie for the 7th time. So I think animation canceling is a big part of it, as well as the input method. Those were kind of the two big things. I've been kind of knocking around in my head a couple other things, but I think those are the two things that I'm pretty certain makes Black Desert Online's combat significantly different, I would say, from other MMOs' combat systems. And I see a lot of people talk about how, you know, well, Black Desert Online, you know, yeah, the combat system is good, but it's not anything that hasn't been done before. Here's these other MMOs that have the same, you know, action combat style or whatever. And it's just not the same. It really isn't. It really, really is not. I don't think there is a single MMO out there that has been able to replicate one-to-one the feeling that Black Desert Online's combat system comes with. And I am waiting eagerly for someone to realize that that's the fun part of Black Desert Online. And so literally just rip it. They don't have a trademark on, you know, fighting game style controls or animation cancels, right? That you're not gonna get sued over that. It just doesn't make sense. I'll throw in one last one that I've kind of been weighing on. I kind of understand its necessity. I do, but I don't know. In my head, I'm just like, games have been getting away without this for like over a decade now. We should have this figured out. The fake action combat system is, I think, what I'll call it. So to me, action combat is I can press a button and I'll swing my sword in front of me, right? I think increasingly what I've noticed is this fake action combat style where we basically force you into tab target by saying, yeah, you can press the button, but it's not going to do damage unless you like lock onto somebody. Or I've even seen ones where it says action combat, but then you have to be locked onto someone to press the button, or it doesn't do anything. How does that make any fucking sense? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. In my opinion, true action combat should be spatial, not targeted, I guess I would say. I should shoot an arrow like through the air, and then, you know, whatever physics system you got going on, I suppose, should determine whether that hits or not. Not, you know, oh, well, I have to be tabbed onto this target. I feel like I've been seeing more games labeled as action combat that are basically just kind of disguised tab targeting games, and that's no bueno neither. But anyway, that's enough yapping for today. Thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.